These looms work by this happening with moving the hooks back and forth by a little cascade effect of pushing these ridges up here backwards and forwards, and you can see how that is rotating the hooks. And those hook rotations will bring one side of the loop that went up around them higher, and that is the side that you want up. The side that you want up is going to be the side you're going to be coming from. So if I'm coming from this direction, I want this side to be higher. If I'm coming from this direction, I rotate them and I want this side to be higher. A little hard to see in the camera, but if I put something through there, you can see that one side is higher than the other. To play with that, you can kind of flip it back and forth. So I'm going to be coming again from the right-hand side, and so I want to push these all toward the left-hand side so that it raises the right side. I take my length of floss here and have it just a short little tail here, because I find if you leave your tail too long, it just gets twisted. And with these threads hanging around, make sure to keep them out of your way, so as you weave, you're not going to constantly snagging and tangling everything up. To begin the weft part of our weaving, we're going to stitch down over here and come up close to where these are anchored down here, about as close as you can get to them. And you'll leave a tail over here, just like we did before, because that will be pulled to the other side. Now I have pushed these all to the left because I'm coming from the right. I have found that in order to work this needle through, because this will be our shuttle, you can do the pointy side. You can flip it over and use the eye side, and then it doesn't snag and catch your threads as much. And then you will just slide that, and it's going to be an under over every other one. But because this has twisted and raised half of them, we're just going to go through each loop so that one side is under, one side is over, and you can pull that. Now, however tight you want your little patch will be dictated by a lot of factors, but for this, it's decorative, so we're not going to have it super tight. However, it's called beading when we push the thread down, and it's nice to have the needle in there to push it down. So every other row is when I do the beat process. So right now I just have this, and you don't want to yank this and pull this through too tight either. But when you come through, we've woven through one time, we are going to take a tiny little vertical stitch over here on the side going up that line that I had drawn. Little tiny vertical stitch. And so pull that up. So all that's going to get tangled up. So we have the fabric woven across and the little vertical stitch, so that we can now rotate these over and take our yarn on our needle and go back through, gently pushing it through. And then at this point is when I beat. So that's when I'm going to push down my thread from the previous row and then finish pulling through. And what I like to do is somewhat leave a bit of a rainbow in here so that I'm not yanking it too tight. The fact that this is stitched down helps, but you can still distort your fabric. So I like to leave it just a touch loose there. I'm going to loosen it back up because I don't want my patch to draw in too much. And then once I'm over here, I take a vertical stitch up, kind of going in where that last stitch came up, but just barely. Just going to catch a few threads and then come up. Pull up, rotate all of those, And weave ourselves back across, catching just in between, push down. And however hard you pull down is however tight it will be. But you can't overdo it on this kind of patch because you will have to find a way to get more stitches on the side to get more rows in there the more you pull down. So it's all about finesse. We are finessing this, you are figuring it out. As we go, your first patch will be a little rocky, no worries. It's a patch, it's decorative, you'll get better. And again, we're going to take a vertical stitch up the side. This is a very sturdy, sharp needle with a large eye that works well for bigger yarns. If you're finding that your fabric isn't working too well, you can get smaller, thinner, more delicate needles to work with more delicate patches. It may not break the material here. This is kind of like cutting through it a little bit because this is a stretchy denim. Now I've got a little twisty knot in mine. Lovely. There we go. And again, don't over tension and distort too much. As I'm talking, I am doing it too much. All right. And you can always pull back a little bit. There we go. And then we're going to rotate and take ourselves back across. Drifting over. Sorry about that. Get it down. And if you find, oh, my loop's a little off, you can give it a little bit of a tension adjustment. Keep it going. Now continue to work, and I will see you when we get back up to there. You're at a point where you have started to fill up these warp threads with your weaving, and it's going to become very challenging to get your needle cleanly through. It's not going to break you, but you just are going to need to continue to work a few more rows of your weaving as you do that. I, again, use the eye side of my needle often to work through, but at this point I do find it easier to switch and use the sharp point of the needle to make my way through just that little bit easier. But you really do want to crowd these hooks up here with your warp thread, or with your weaving, your weft thread as you come further and further up your little patch. Because if you don't, you're going to have this just big loops of unworked warp. So I am rotating, going to work my way back across, and I will actually do one more row of weaving before I am done. Maybe possibly get a second one in there. We'll see. But you definitely want to fill that up. And if you're really struggling, you can just use your needle to pull that down out of your way and beat that down so that you can more easily get to the space left in the loops. So another vertical stitch up. Rotate on my hooks. And run the weft thread across. Oh. Yeah, I think I can get one more. Once that's pulled down. It does make it a little more challenging to get that vertical stitch in, but you can do it. I have faith in you. All right, last stitch up. Really cram in that last warp thread. I think I saw some other video where the person said, if this is not frustrating, then you haven't gone far enough. So get that last little one in, get that little shush down, pull that through. Now we have done enough. To move on to the next step, we will take off this band here that is holding this in place. Try to keep it from shooting across the room. So with that band out of the way, we can now remove this by gently pulling up. You can stand some of these up a little bit more and rotating it to remove your loom. Well, let's take a minute and admire our cute little patch there that we've done. But it's not finished because right now you have a pocket because the upper part has not been attached. So to attach that upper part, depending on which way you're coming from, if you're right-handed, it might be easier to come from the right-hand side to finish off. If you're left-handed, come from the left-hand side, but you can also just rotate your work just as well so that you can come from the direction that you're sewing. And what you want to do is each one of these loops you need to tack down through your backing fabric. So to do that, don't yank this. Don't distort your beautiful little patch. Kind of hold it down, and you want to stitch down into the fabric underneath where stitch down in. So wherever this is lining up, you can catch the fabric underneath. I'll show you that. And then I like to come up through the loop. And then come back down and up through the next loop and just work your way across, tacking that down. Excellent. Last stitch. Now we want to take all of these threads to the back side. For these, we can just pull them through, but for this one, I'm going to stitch it through. So I just slide this in, keeping it underneath the fabric along that wooden disc that's in there. And then now I can go ahead and take off this other band that's holding the fabric down, take out the disc, flip it over inside out, and pull that tail through. These tails we can just pull through. Now all our tails are on the wrong side. If we have a hole here, you can use these to come in and kind of clean up the edge of your hole to prevent it from fraying anymore. We do not have that in this case, so I am just going to poke this through my denim, and between the patch and the denim, you can kind of separate it a little bit by pulling the patch away from the denim ever so gently, slightly, to be able to get this through without catching. You don't want to stitch through the patch, basically. Don't stitch through the patch. So just kind of weave that, wiggle that in. So I am underneath the denim. I am not coming through my patch. And I can pull in. And now that is woven in. That is now woven in. If you're using this on a knit fabric, you can just weave it in to the knit fabric. Trim that. So now my thread is tucked in, so let's do that with the rest of these. These two are over here together, so I'm actually going to do them at the same time because I have a large enough needle to do that. Now, because these are short, I will put this in, back through, and I will tuck these in then. So if you don't want to have to put the needle in and then stick your thread in, leave a longer tail. All right, those are in. Pop them into the fabric. Trim those away. One more. Check, make sure you haven't gone through your patch. Finished. Now that we have cut all our threads, flip it over and we can examine our work.